The colony world of 9 had been a beautiful place once. Green forests stretched across its surface. Rivers of clean water flowed between mountains of purple stone. 12 different alien species had built their homes here. They had lived together in peace for 300 years. Then the Umbral came, and everything changed. Commander Lyra stood on a hill and looked down at what remained of the capital city. Buildings lay in ruins. Streets were empty. No lights shone in any window. The only sound was the wind moving through broken glass. She had seen many terrible things in her years with the Galactic Coalition. She had fought pirates and stopped wars, but she had never seen anything like this. An entire world emptied in just 2 weeks. "The evacuation is complete," said her second officer, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. "All registered citizens have been removed from the planet." "All of them?" Lyra asked. "All who could be found, some. Some were taken before we arrived." Lyra closed her eyes. She knew what taken meant. The Umbral did not leave bodies behind. They did not leave anything behind. They simply took people into the darkness, and those people were never seen again. The Umbral were the oldest fear in the galaxy. They had existed before most species learned to walk upright. They lived in shadows, in the dark spaces between light. No one knew exactly what they looked like. No one had ever seen one clearly and lived to describe it. They were shapes in the corner of your eye. They were the feeling of being watched when you were alone. They were the cold hand on your shoulder in an empty room. And they were hungry, always hungry. "We need to leave," the second officer said. "The suns will set in 40 hours, when night comes." "I know what happens when night comes." Lyra turned away from the dead city. "Signal all ships, we're pulling out." She walked back toward her shuttle, her boots crunching on broken stone. This was the way it always went. The Umbral appeared on a world. The Coalition evacuated everyone they could. Then they left the planet to the darkness. There was no other choice. You could not fight the Umbral. You could not even see them clearly enough to aim a weapon at them. Entire fleets had tried. Entire armies had stood against them with the best weapons in the galaxy. None of it mattered. The Umbral could not be conquered. They could only be fled from. As Lyra reached her shuttle, her communication device made a sharp sound. She looked at the screen and felt her stomach drop. "Commander," said a voice filled with static. "This is Dr. Cole of the research vessel Adamantine. We have crashed in Sector 7. Our engines are destroyed. We cannot take off. There are 37 of us. Please respond." Lyra closed her eyes again. Sector 7 was deep inside the quarantine zone. No Coalition ship could reach it before nightfall, and even if they could, the Umbral were already there. She could feel them somehow, waiting in every shadow, growing stronger as the suns moved lower in the sky. "Dr. Cole," she said slowly, "I am very sorry, there is nothing we can do. The Umbral." "I know about the Umbral," the voice interrupted. "I have read the reports. I understand what we are facing." "Then you understand that no rescue is possible. I am truly sorry." There was a long pause. When Cole spoke again, his voice was calm. Too calm for a man who had just been told he was going to die. "Understood, Commander. Thank you for your honesty. Adamantine out." The communication ended. Lyra stood there for a long moment, holding the device in her hand. Then she boarded her shuttle and gave the order to leave. There was nothing else she could do. Far below, in the wreckage of a human research vessel, Dr. Cole put down his communication device and looked at the people gathered around him. Scientists, engineers, pilots, security officers, 37 humans from a small planet called Earth, stranded on a world that would soon belong to the dark. "Well," said Chief Engineer, a small woman with grease on her face and fire in her eyes. "That sounded bad." "It is bad," admitted. "No rescue is coming. The Coalition has abandoned this planet. In 40 hours the suns will set and a long night will begin. 3 weeks of darkness." "And the Umbral?" asked Private. She was young, barely 22, but she held her weapon like someone who knew how to use it. They will hunt, that is what they do. That is all they do. Fear moved through the group like a cold wind. Could see it in their faces, in the way they looked at the shadows gathering in the corners of the crashed ship. The first sun was already touching the horizon. The light was turning golden, then orange, then red. But something else moved through the group too. Something that burned beneath the fear. Had seen it before in the eyes of humans facing impossible odds. It was not hope exactly. It was something older. Something that had kept their species alive on a world full of predators. A world where early humans had been small and weak and afraid. Stubbornness, pure, unreasonable stubbornness. "So we're going to die?" asked Doctor, the team's chemist. Her voice was steady. "Everyone dies eventually," said. "But I do not plan to die today, or tomorrow, or any day during the next 3 weeks." Hal asked. "You heard what the commander said. No one fights the Umbral, no one survives them." Looked out through a crack in the ship's hull. The shadows were growing longer. Somewhere in those shadows, something ancient and terrible was beginning to wake. He could feel it watching them, testing them, tasting their fear. He smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had nothing left to lose. "No one has survived them yet," he said, "but we are human, and our ancestors survived ice ages. They survived predators with teeth as long as their arms. They survived a world that tried to kill them every single day. They did not survive by running. They survived by learning, by adapting, by refusing to give up." He turned back to face his people. "The Umbral think they are the greatest hunters in the galaxy. They have never met anything like us. So let us teach them something new. Let us show them what happens when they hunt a species that does not know how to quit." Outside the first sunset, the shadows grew deeper. And in those shadows, the Umbral began to move. The night was coming. The Unconquerable was coming. But the humans were not afraid, or rather they were afraid, terribly, desperately afraid, but they were human, and for humans fear was not the end. It was just the beginning. The humans moved with a purpose that confused Al. The Eye Ambassador had been too injured to evacuate. His leg was broken and his wings were torn. He had hidden in the wreckage of a building, waiting for death when the humans found him. They had carried him to their crashed ship. They had treated his wounds, and now he watched them work, and he could not understand what he was seeing. They were not panicking, they were not crying, they were not praying to whatever gods humans believed in. They were making lists. "Food supplies will last 18 days if we are careful," said a young woman named Private. She wrote numbers on a piece of metal with a marker. "Water is not a problem. The ship's recycling system still works." "Weapons?" asked Dr. Cole. 12 standard firearms, 300 rounds of ammunition, 6 plasma cutters, 14 flashlights, 22 flares. Looked up. "Also, Chief says she can turn the ship's emergency lights into portable lamps." "Good. What about medical supplies?" The list continued. Food, water, weapons, medicine, tools. The humans counted everything. They organized everything. They prepared for a war that every species in the galaxy knew could not be won. Al felt his mind struggle to make sense of it. The Umbral were coming. The Umbral were unconquerable. This was known. This was truth. Every child of every species learned this before they learned to speak. When the Umbral came, you ran. There was no other option. "Why are you doing this?" he finally asked. His voice was weak. His translator turned his clicks and whistles into human words. Looked at him. The human's eyes were tired but sharp. "Doing what?" "Preparing, fighting. The Umbral cannot be stopped. They have destroyed civilizations older than your entire species. They have eaten worlds. You cannot beat them with flashlights and lists." "Maybe not," said, "but we can try." "Why?" It was a simple question, but did not answer right away. He sat down next to the injured alien and was quiet for a moment. On our world, he said finally, there is an animal called a honey badger. It is small, very small. It weighs about 10 kilograms, but it fights creatures 10 times its size. It fights lions, it fights leopards, it fights packs of hyenas. Sometimes it loses, sometimes it dies, but it never stops fighting, it never gives up. Scientists cannot explain it. The animal should run. Running would be smarter, but it does not run. It just keeps fighting no matter what. Smiled. Humans are like that. We are not the strongest species. We are not the fastest. We are not the biggest, but we do not know how to stop. It is not bravery. It is something deeper, something broken in our brains maybe. We see something impossible, and instead of accepting that it is impossible, we get angry. We get stubborn. We think, why should this be impossible? Who decided that? Al stared at him. The Umbral have killed trillions. And we have killed ourselves in even greater numbers. We have fought wars that destroyed nations. We have built weapons that could end all life on our planet, and then we kept going. We did not stop. We never stop. Stood up. The Umbral are scary, I will not lie about that, but my ancestors were scared of the dark too. They sat in caves with nothing but fire to protect them, and they were terrified. But they did not let the fear control them. They studied the dark. They learned its secrets. They became the thing that other creatures feared. He looked out at the darkening sky. The second sun was beginning to set now. The shadows were growing longer, reaching across the ground like hungry fingers. The Umbral think they are predators. They think we are prey, but they have never hunted humans before. They do not know what we are. They do not know that we were never really prey. We just looked like it. In the hours that followed, the humans transformed their crashed ship into a fortress, worked without rest, connecting wires and building machines. She created lights that could be turned on instantly with the touch of a button. She built sound systems that could create loud noises to confuse attackers. She even found a way to make the ship's broken engine produce heat, lots of heat, enough to power everything they needed. Doctor worked with the chemicals they had brought for research. She mixed things together, tested them, threw away what did not work, and kept trying. She was looking for something that would hurt the Umbral. She did not know what yet, but she would find it. Questioned Al for hours. He wanted to know everything about the Umbral. How did they move? How did they attack? How did they choose their victims? What did they do before they killed? They create fear, Al said. They fill your mind with terror. You cannot move. You cannot think. You can only feel the fear, and then they take you. Psychological attack, muttered, writing in his notebook. They paralyze prey with fear before striking. That means they need the fear. It is part of their hunting method. What does that matter? It matters because fear is something we understand. We have lived with fear for millions of years. We know its shape. We know its weight. And we know how to keep moving even when we are terrified. The second sun touched the horizon. Orange light spilled across the sky, then red, then purple. The shadows deepened. The temperature dropped. Somewhere in the distance, something screamed. It was not a human sound. It was not an animal sound. It was something else entirely. The Umbral were waking up. Private checked her weapon for the 10th time. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were steady. They are coming, Al whispered. His voice trembled with ancient fear. The night is coming. We will all die. Stood at the entrance of their makeshift fortress. He held a flashlight in one hand and a flare in the other. Behind him, 36 humans stood ready, scared, determined, stubborn beyond all reason. Maybe, said, but if we die fighting. And maybe, just maybe, we will make them remember us. We will make them think twice before they hunt humans again. The second sun disappeared below the horizon. Darkness fell upon 9. And in that darkness, 37 small lights began to shine, tiny points of defiance in an ocean of shadow, insignificant, foolish, hopeless. But burning, still burning. The Umbral moved closer. They tasted the air. They felt the fear of their prey, hot and rich and delicious. But they felt something else too, something they had never felt before. Resistance. The night trembled beneath sharp shadows, but the humans did not tremble with it. They stood their ground. They raised their lights. And they waited for the monsters to come. The attack came 1 hour after sunset. Private was watching the eastern corridor when she saw it. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. The shadow in the corner seemed to move. It seemed to grow. It seemed to reach toward her like a living thing. Then she felt the fear. It hit her like a wave of ice water. Every terrible thing she had ever experienced came rushing back. Every nightmare, every moment of panic, every time she had been small and helpless and alone. The fear filled her mind until there was no room for anything else. Her body froze. Her weapon fell from her hands. She could not move. She could not think. She could only feel the terror consuming her from the inside. The shadow detached from the wall. It moved toward her. She could see it now, sort of. It was made of angles and edges and wrong shapes. It had no eyes, but she knew it was looking at her. It had no mouth, but she knew it was hungry. This was how it ended. This was how all prey ended, frozen by fear, taken by darkness. But was human. And humans had been afraid since the beginning. Fear was their oldest companion. They had learned to live with it. They had learned to use it. On Earth, fear made your heart beat faster. It made your muscles fill with blood. It made you stronger, faster, more alert. Fear was not a weakness for humans. Fear was fuel. Screamed, it was not a scream of terror. It was a scream of rage. Her frozen body broke free. Her hand found her flashlight. She raised it and pressed the button. Light exploded through the corridor. The umbral shrieked. It was a sound that no human had ever heard before, a sound that no living thing in the galaxy had ever caused. The shadow creature twisted and writhed as the light touched it. For one brief moment it became solid, visible, real, and saw what the umbral truly were. They were not ghosts. They were not demons. They were creatures of flesh and darkness, beings that existed between dimensions, that hid in the spaces where light could not reach. They were predators, yes, ancient and terrible predators, but they were still just animals, and animals could be hurt. Light hurts them, screamed into her radio. Light hurts them. Her voice echoed through the crashed ship. Every human heard it. Every human understood. The umbral had ruled the darkness for millions of years because no one had ever fought back. No one had ever thought to study them during an attack. Every species in the galaxy had been too busy running, too busy dying, too busy being afraid. But the humans were not running. They were paying attention. Within minutes, the battle changed. Flashlights came on everywhere. Flares burst to life, filling corridors with red and orange fire. Activated her emergency light system, and suddenly the crashed ship blazed like a small sun. The darkness retreated. The shadows screamed. Watched from the command center as his people fought. They were not winning, not exactly. The umbral kept coming, kept testing their defenses, kept looking for weak points. But they were not losing either. They were surviving. "This is impossible," Al whispered. The Eye Ambassador was pressed against the wall, his compound eyes wide with disbelief. "No one survives the first night. No one." "We are not no one," said. "We are human." The battle lasted for 6 hours. The umbral attacked again and again, probing different parts of the ship, trying to find darkness where they could hunt. But the humans had prepared. Every corridor was lit. Every corner had a guard with a flashlight. Every shadow was watched. 2 humans died that night. A scientist named Dr. Park was caught alone when his flashlight failed. A pilot named Jackson was pulled through a window that should have been sealed. Their screams echoed through the ship, and everyone heard them. Everyone felt the loss. But 35 humans survived. When the twin suns began to rise again, the umbral retreated. They melted back into the few remaining shadows, hissing with frustration and confusion. They had expected easy prey. They had expected frozen victims waiting to be taken. Instead, they had found fire. They had found light. They had found resistance. Gathered his people in the main hall. They were exhausted. Their faces were pale. Their hands were shaking. The terror of the night still lived in their eyes, but they were alive. Against all odds, against all history, against everything the galaxy knew to be true, they were alive. "We lost too," said. His voice was heavy. "Dr. Park and Jackson, they were brave, they fought until the end. We will remember them." A moment of silence, then spoke. "But we killed some of them too. I saw one die in my flashlight beam. It just broke apart, like it could not exist in the light." "I killed one with a flare," said another soldier. "Threw it right into the thing's face." "I caught one with UV lamp. It screamed for almost a minute before it disappeared." Nodded slowly. Hope was a dangerous thing, but he could not stop it from growing in his chest. They had done the impossible. They had hurt the umbral. They had made the unconquerable bleed. "The night lasted only 6 hours," he said. "The real darkness begins soon. 3 weeks of night. The umbral will learn from this attack. They will adapt. They will come at us harder. We need to be ready." Stepped forward. "I have been thinking about their weakness. They exist in some kind of dimensional shift. They hide in shadows because shadows are where the dimensions overlap. Light disrupts the shift, forces them into our reality." "So they are not invincible," Doctor said. "They just exist in a different way than we do." "Exactly. And if we can understand how they exist, we can find better ways to hurt them." Outside, the suns climbed higher. The world grew bright. The shadows retreated to tiny slivers beneath rocks and inside the ruined buildings of the dead city. Somewhere in those shadows, the umbral waited, watched, planned. They had hunted for millions of years. They had killed trillions of creatures across thousands of worlds. They had never failed. They had never met prey that could truly fight back. Until now. The humans rested during the day. They repaired their defenses. They improved their weapons. They studied the recordings from the night's battle, looking for patterns, looking for weaknesses, looking for any advantage they could find. Al watched them work. He still could not believe what he had seen. The fear in his heart was still there, but something else was growing beside it, something strange, something that felt almost like hope. "You really think you can survive?" he asked. Looked at him. The human was tired. Dark circles surrounded his eyes, but his smile was real. "I do not know," he said honestly, "but I know we will keep fighting until we cannot fight anymore. That is what humans do. We are stubborn like that." The suns moved across the sky. The hours passed. The shadows began to grow again. Night was coming. The umbral were coming. But this time the darkness would find its prey waiting, ready, unbroken. The night trembled beneath sharp shadows. But the humans did not tremble with it. The siege lasted 11 days. The umbral did not make the same mistake twice. They learned, they adapted, they changed their methods. On the second night, they attacked from below. They rose up through the floor itself, through shadows that the humans had not thought to light. 3 more people died before the survivors realized what was happening. On the third night, the umbral waited. They did not attack at all. They simply watched from the darkness, letting the humans stay awake, letting them burn through their batteries and their energy. When exhaustion finally forced some to sleep, the umbral struck the guards. 2 more were taken. On the fourth night, they learned to move between the flashlight beams. They timed their attacks to the exact moment when someone blinked, when a light flickered, when attention wandered for just 1 second. But the humans learned too. Studied every attack. He noticed patterns. The umbral always came from specific directions. They favored certain kinds of shadows. They attacked certain types of people more than others, the ones who showed the most fear, the ones whose terror was the richest. "They feed on fear," he announced on the 5th day. "Not physically, but psychologically. The fear is part of their hunting method. It paralyzes prey, but it also seems to strengthen them. The more afraid you are, the more solid they become." "So we need to be less afraid?" asked. She had not slept in 3 days. Her hands shook when she held her tools. "We need to be afraid differently. Fear is not the problem. Panic is the problem. Freezing is the problem. We need to stay afraid but keep moving. They developed new methods. They taught each other to breathe through the terror. They created buddy systems so no one was ever alone. They sang songs during the dark hours, filling the silence with noise that kept the mind focused. Doctor had her breakthrough on the 6th day. She had been experimenting with chemicals, trying to find something that would hurt the umbral directly. She had failed dozens of times, but she kept trying. Phosphorus compounds, she announced, holding up a small bottle of glowing liquid. Combined with oxidizers. When the umbral enter a shadow treated with this mixture, the chemical reaction creates light from within the shadow itself. The shadow burns. They tested it that night, painted the mixture on walls, on floors, on every surface near their defenses. When the umbral tried to pass through, the shadows they inhabited erupted in white fire. The screams of the dying creatures echoed through the ship. 7 umbral died that night. 7 creatures that had existed for thousands of years, that had killed millions of beings across the galaxy, ended by human chemistry, ended by a woman who had refused to stop trying. On the 8th night, everything changed. The Umbral Queen came. She was vast. She was ancient. She was not just a predator but the mother of all predators. She had led her kind for eons, since before most species in the galaxy had evolved eyes. She had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had eaten gods. And she was angry. The queen did not hide in shadows. She was shadow. She filled the entire eastern sky, a wound in reality shaped like hatred and hunger. Her presence pressed down on the crashed ship like the weight of a mountain. Every human felt it. Every human fell to their knees under the pressure of her mind. She spoke directly into their thoughts. Her voice was cold, old, endless. "What are you?" Forced himself to stand. It took every bit of strength he had. The fear was overwhelming, a tsunami of terror that threatened to drown his mind completely. But he had lived with fear his entire life. All humans had. They had evolved on a world where fear meant survival. They did not fight fear. They used it. "We are human," he said out loud. His voice shook, his body trembled, but he did not fall. "You are prey. You should not fight. You should not survive. Why do you not die?" "Because we choose not to." The queen's presence grew heavier, darker, more suffocating. "I have ENDED-CIVILIZATONS. I have CONSUMED entire species. I have hunted across GALAXIES. No prey has ever RESISTED me. No creature has ever survived MY attention. Then we will be the first." "Impossible." Smiled, it hurt to smile, everything hurt. The queen's mind was crushing him from the inside, but he smiled anyway. "We have been doing impossible things since we first came down from the trees. Our ancestors were small and weak. They had no claws, they had no fangs, they had no armor. Every predator on our world should have eaten them. Every disease should have killed them. Every ice age should have frozen them. But they survived. They conquered. They became the most dangerous species our planet had ever seen." He took a step forward, just one step. But it was a step toward the queen, a step into the darkness. "You think you are the scariest thing we have ever faced. Our ancestors faced creatures just as terrible. They faced tigers with teeth as long as swords. They faced bears the size of houses. They faced the cold and the dark and their own violent nature. And they won, not because they were stronger, because they refused to quit." The queen was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, uncertain. "I do not understand. Fear should break you." "Fear does not break humans. Fear forges us. Every time we face something terrifying and survive, we become stronger. You have been making us stronger all week." For the first time in her eternal existence, the queen of the Umbral felt something new, something cold, something unwelcome. She felt doubt. And deep within that doubt, hidden like a seed in frozen ground, was something else, something her kind had never experienced, something that did not even have a name in her ancient language. Fear. The Queen. She pulled her presence back from the human ship. She needed to think. She needed to understand these strange creatures who fought when fighting was useless, who laughed in the face of certain death, who treated terror like an old friend. Inside the ship collapsed, caught him before he hit the ground. He was breathing hard. His nose was bleeding from the mental pressure, but he was alive. Did we win? Asked. Shook his head. No, we bought time. She will come back. She will bring everything she has. This is not over. He looked around at his people. 18 left now. 18 out of 37, exhausted, wounded, terrified. But not broken, not yet. We have 3 days until the sun's return, he said. 3 days until dawn. We need to survive until then, and we need to find a way to end this. Outside, the Queen retreated into the absolute darkness. Her children gathered around her, billions of shadows waiting for her command. She had hunted for millions of years. She had never known fear. But now, for the first time, she understood what her prey had always felt. And she did not like it at all. The final battle came on the last night before the sun's returned. Had known it would come, he had planned for it. For 11 days, while his people fought and bled and died, he had been working on something. A final solution. A last desperate gamble. The Adamantine's emergency beacon was designed to call for help across vast distances of space. It contained more power than most small cities used in a year. When activated normally, it would send a signal that could reach the Galactic Coalition anywhere in the sector. But it spent 11 days rebuilding it into something else entirely. It will work, she said, her voice tired but certain. Every power cell, every fuel reserve, every battery and generator and energy source on the ship, all of it connected, all of it ready to release at once. How much light? Asked. Enough to turn night into day, for about 30 seconds, maybe 40 if we are lucky. And then... Did not answer, she did not need to, they both knew. The explosion of energy would not just create light, it would create heat, force, destruction. Anyone near the ship when it happened would not survive. Nodded slowly. He had expected this. He had hoped for something better, but he had expected this. Can you set it to activate remotely? Give people time to get to a safe distance. I can try, but the range will not be far. Maybe 200 meters, maybe less. 200 meters. In the absolute darkness with umbral everywhere, 200 meters might as well be 200 kilometers. Not everyone would make it. Maybe no one would make it. But the umbral would die. The Queen would die. And the galaxy would finally know that the unconquerable could be conquered. Gathered his people one last time. 18 humans. 18 survivors out of 37. They had fought harder than any species in galactic history had ever fought against the umbral. They had learned secrets that no one had ever learned. They had proven that the darkness could be pushed back. I am not going to lie to you, said. Tonight they will come for us with everything. The Queen herself will lead them. Every shadow on this continent will be hunting us. Our lights will not be enough. Our chemicals will not be enough. Nothing will be enough. He paused, looked at each face, saw the fear, saw the exhaustion, saw the stubborn, unbreakable determination that made humans what they were. But we have a weapon, one last weapon. When I give the signal, we'll activate the beacon. It will create a light brighter than anything the umbral have ever seen, bright enough to kill them, all of them. And us? Asked quietly. Everyone needs to run. Get as far from the ship as possible before the light comes. I will stay. Someone needs to make sure the Queen is close enough when it happens. No one spoke, then stepped forward. I should stay. It is my machine. I know how it works. No, said. You have done enough, more than enough. And you have not. You have led us for 11 days. You have kept us alive when we should have died 100 times. You do not get to sacrifice yourself and call it fair." Before could argue, the ground began to shake. The walls of the ship groaned. Outside, the darkness grew thicker, deeper, hungrier. She was coming. The Umbral Queen rose from every shadow at once. She was everywhere and nowhere. She was the darkness itself, given form and fury. Her children surrounded the ship in numbers beyond counting. A sea of shadow, an army of nightmares. "This ends now." Her voice filled every mind. Her presence crushed every thought. The humans fell, all of them, even who had fought harder than anyone. "I gave you a chance to die easily. You refused. Now you will suffer. I will take you one by one. I will feed on your fear 4 years. Decades. I will show the galaxy what happens to prey that forgets its place." Could not move, could not breathe, could not think. The Queen's power was absolute. There was no fighting it, no resisting it. This was the end. But then he heard something. A voice, small and weak and broken, but still speaking. "There is," an old human saying. It was Al. The Eye Ambassador was crawling across the floor, dragging his broken body toward the control panel where had installed the trigger. His compound eyes were clouded with pain. His wings were torn, but he was moving. He was still moving. The Queen's attention shifted. For one moment, her grip on the humans weakened. "What are you doing, insect?" "They saved me," Al whispered. His voice was barely audible. "They did not have to. They were going to die, but they saved me anyway. That is what humans do. They save people, even when it costs them everything." He reached the panel. His broken limbs stretched toward the button. "There is an old human saying," he repeated. "It is always darkest before the dawn." "No." The Queen surged toward him, a tsunami of shadow and hatred. Al pressed the button. For one eternal moment, nothing happened. Then the world exploded in light. Every power cell, every fuel reserve, every scrap of energy that the adamantine had left, all of it released at once. A supernova of pure radiance, a second sun born in the heart of darkness. The Queen screamed. It was not a sound that could be described in any language. It was the death cry of something ancient, something that had existed before stars were born, something that had believed itself eternal and unconquerable. She burned, her children burned, every umbral on the continent burned. The light lasted 37 seconds. 1 second for every human who had crashed on 9. 1 second for every soul who had fought against the impossible. Then it faded, and the darkness was gone. When the Coalition rescue ships arrived 3 days later, they expected to find corpses. They expected to find ruins. They expected to find another world that the Umbral had taken. Instead, they found 11 humans sitting in a scorched crater, sharing the last of their water. Al had not survived the explosion. Neither had who had thrown herself in front of it the last moment. Their sacrifice had bought the others time to run, time to survive. Commander Lyra walked through the crater in silence. She saw the destruction. She saw the bodies of Umbral burned to ash, scattered across kilometers of blackened earth. She saw the remains of the Umbral Queen, still smoking, still somehow radiating wrongness even in death. "How," she whispered, "how did you do this?" Looked up at her. He was burned, broken, half dead, but he was smiling. "We are human," he said. "We do not know how to quit." Word spread across the galaxy like fire. The Umbral were not invincible. They could be studied. They could be fought. They could be killed. And it was the humans who had proven it. A small, young species from an insignificant planet, a species that should have died in the first hour. Al had recorded everything before he died. His final message was broadcast to every world in the Coalition. "They were afraid," he said in the recording. His voice was calm, peaceful, proud. "They were always afraid, but they have a saying on their world. Courage is not the absence of fear, but action in spite of it. The night trembled beneath sharp shadows, but the humans trembled too, and then they conquered. Somewhere in the dark between stars, the surviving umbral gathered. They had lost their queen. They had lost billions of their kind. They had lost something even more important. They had lost their reputation. They were no longer the unconquerable. And they had learned a new word, a new name, a warning that they whispered to each other in the shadows between galaxies. Human. The creatures who refused to die. The prey that became predators. The small, stubborn, impossible species that had looked at the darkness and said no. Never again would the umbral hunt humans. Some prey was simply not worth the cost. And on a distant blue planet called Earth, billions of humans continued their lives. They went to work. They raised families. They laughed and cried and dreamed. They had no idea that somewhere across the stars, the oldest hunters in the universe now spoke their name with fear. But perhaps deep down they knew. Perhaps that was why they had always been afraid of the dark. Not because they were weak, but because somewhere, in the ancient memory of their species, they remembered being the monsters that other monsters feared. The night trembled beneath sharp shadows, but it never trembled beneath humans. Not anymore, not ever again.